we're just at the kickoff phase. Um, of course, again, we need to differentiate functional IDs and the national ID. National ID is a secure, unique way to authenticate you. And when we look at our functional IDs, Social Security, it has specific uses. In the case of Social Security, is to track your employment, to track your contributions, and to track your benefits, right? When we look at our driver's license, it's simply used um, to provide you as a driver what driving, I'll call it rights you have, right? Maybe you can drive a standard or an automatic and a truck, a plane, whatever you want to include in that driver's license, right? So for that specific use. And the same thing with the voter's ID. The voter's ID allows you to authenticate yourself on the day of elections for voting purposes only. And that is what their respective legislation states. And now, when we look at a national ID, it is more encompassing. And of course, we need legislation. So one of the key aspects is that once we get the final approval from within government, it kicks off the open tender for legislation review. We need legislation to back up the national ID, right? How should we use a national ID? How do we link the new legislation with our public sector Data Sharing Act? And how do we also link it to our Data Protection Act? When we look at the national ID from an infrastructure perspective, the national ID infrastructure needs to connect with all databases that exist within the public and also to some extent to the private sector, because the private sector will also be using this platform to authenticate the user. And so there's a huge differentiation when we look at national ID and functional IDs. Now, whether the national ID will replace some of the functional IDs, I honestly believe it will.